Welcome to Globespan. I'm Paul Nehru, Tennassee of Guyana, and I have with me today two very important guests. Dr. Veerasammy Ramayya, who is an activist in Region 6 and Region 5, and sometimes all across the country. And I also have with us today the Deputy Mayor of Linden, Mr. Waynewright Bethune. Mr. Waynewright Bethune. We are going to have a very interesting discussion today because what we are going to be discussing are grassroots issues. And all across the world, the people in the grassroots are suffering. We are living in a world today that I say is on fire, a world that is upside down. And both the earth and humanity, the human race, are in deep pain and are suffering. Both the earth and the human being is in great need of healing. One of the reasons why we feel pain and we suffer is because of a word called deprivation, where there are some basic necessities of life. We need clean water. We need clean air. We need food. We need work. We need freedom. And this has been the cry throughout the centuries of all peoples, of all ethnicities, all races, all cultures across the globe. And we have experienced empires, all kind of empires. We had the Genghis Khan Empire. We had the Roman Empire, the British Empire, the Dutch Empire, the French Empire. We had empires in China, empires in Japan, empires all over the world. In Africa, we had empires. And somehow over these centuries, we have had rule from above and the limited participation of those who are governed from below. We have come a far way from kings and queens to so-called democracies, where we can elect a government in verifiable, free and fair election periodically in many countries across the world. But today we see a growing tendency of dictatorship and autocracy. But whether we have formal liberal democracy or we have autocracies and dictatorships, what is absent is real participation and real democracy from the grassroots above. I had a mentor, and I've had about 5. He's a Latin American labor leader from Argentina. And he inspired me at 21 years old and trained me with a generation of labor leaders from Mexico to Chile. And he taught us a few things that I remember. One, he says, only the people can save the people. Solo el pueblo salva el pueblo. And then he said to us also, he said, we must commit ourselves to the philosophy that those who have more should pay more. Those who have less should pay less. And for those who do not have, a hand of solidarity should be outstretched to them. So today, Dr. Ramayya and Mr. Waynewright Bethune, this program is yours. Let's start with Ramayya as our old horse. Tell us, Dr. Ramayya, over the years, you have been battling in the grassroots and for the grassroots. What is happening today in the grassroots of Guyana? What are the main issues and the challenges, in your opinion, that the people across Region 6 and 5 are facing, or across Guyana? You have the floor, my brother.
Well, Paul, thank you to have me on the program. And let me say a good evening to all the viewers of Globespan. And let me say thanks to Nohar to put this program together for the people to become cognizant of what is happening in our country. I'm living for the last 27 years in Berbice and across Guyana. I was in Georgetown for about 16 years also working. I find that jobs is a pivotal importance for any development of any third world country, creation of jobs. And I find that is lacking. And recently, we have too many hands out where jobs could have been created by those funds that was distributed, where we could have factories open up in Berbice. And the other question is, Paul, that what I observe that the infrastructure development is not what I expected after the 2020 national election. And as you know, I indicated to you, because of my deep concern to expose the problems that are affecting the people of Berbice as a whole, region 6 and 5. I was questioned, my integrity was questioned as to my principle that I should make things right in Berbice and I should say good things, what is happening in Berbice, but that is not my nature. And I will have to be very candid with you because I was accused by some political elites or associates that I am bad-mouthing the government, which I am not. I am just talking about the issue because the government of the day is allocating money for these programs. And the work is not being done. But recently, I was told that by one of the ministers that Berbice has no problems. And I just have people left my home with NIS problems. Now, if Berbice not got any problems, then I don't think my services are needed. So what I did, I resigned from my position as the coordinator for the president and the vice president. Now, the reason I did that, Paul, because I cannot compromise my principle, and you know me for a long time, and my integrity and honesty for anybody. I call a spade a spade. And when I talk about infrastructure development, the streets is in a deplorable conditions. The roads right now, that if you travel on the upper quarantine, the abuse of the public road by tractors and trucks and all these things, that even we cannot clear it up for people to drive safely on the road nighttime. So what happened as a whole? People are struggling for those who are without jobs. So recently, the vice president, they came up with a program for people who are unemployed, $40,000 a month for 10 days per month. So I appreciated what the vice president was doing and the president. However, by the same token, the people who were supposed to be employed in a particular home, single parents particularly, they're not getting a job. But when I start to do my investigation and people start complaining, what happened? 3-person, 2-person, the husband is working in the estate, is a professional person, and they have the job, all because they're politically affiliated. So the whole aspect here, and I see a lot of black people not employed because they are coming to. So who are getting the jobs? And why these people are not looking at the people who are unemployed? Look, last Friday, Paul, the president with good intention, they give out $150,000 to fishermen. Last year, they distributed billions of dollars to rice farmers. And I know fishermen right in Wim who are not working as a fisher person, collected $150,000. He's not currently working anywhere. For years now, he's not working. How he got this money? So the distribution of what is coming is not that the government is not putting an input into the development of the region somewhere or the other for people to provide bread and butter on the table. But who is getting it? Accountability, and this is what I talked about, as you mentioned, accountability is not there. And my brother probably from Linden will be able to discuss some of those things. What is the accountability? I don't know. Fertilizer is coming, and I question that. And I think what is happening, that every government should respect when a person like myself is asking questions for the government of the people, why Dr. Ramayya is saying X and Y. He has a reason. Why don't we question his reason? And I got enough proof of that. So why the list can't come up? Now, billions of dollars was given out Friday. You want to know what is happening? For jobs, contractors. So we have a failing tender board, that the tender board is not giving out jobs anymore. It's coming from people from the region, people who got controlled. And this is my big fight with what is going on. There's a lot of injustice that only party people, mostly party people, and the president can say that I am wrong on that issue.
Okay,
I can show them.
Let's hold it there for a second, and let's bring in Brother Waynewright Bethune from Linden. In both Linden and the quarantine, I did a lot of grassroots work in the 80s. In Linden, I had a lot of support in 1985, and I had about, when I contested the election in 85, I had about 33 polling agents and about 20-something candidates. The DLM and the PNC and WPA contested. PPP didn't contest Linden in that year. So I know these grassroots areas, and I visit Guyana regularly. And what I found out is that Guyana, the reality has not changed. As a matter of fact, when I go to the quarantine, I lived all over Guyana, Bartica, Georgetown, so forth. But when I go on the quarantine, like when I was going to high school, I have not seen any real fundamental transformation. And in Linden also, I go there every time I go to Guyana, meet my friends, and I'm not seeing changes, but probably you all are on the ground. You all are seeing more than I'm seeing. So Waynewright, welcome to the program. And I'd like to congratulate you that you're the deputy mayor. Please tell us a bit about your job as deputy mayor. What do you do? What are your responsibilities? And what kind of issues the people of Linden and the grassroots are facing?
Okay, so good evening, gentlemen. Good evening to the viewers. Thank you for having me on your program. So before I get into what I do as a deputy mayor, I'm also employed at the bauxite industry as the technical services coordinator. I'm also responsibility for the environment. And of course, there is the position as deputy mayor, which is basically part-time. But nevertheless, I think the grassroots issues, the discussion has been one that has been there for decades. As you rightfully pointed out, there are marginal changes. I can't say, I want to use the word improvement sparingly. But the grassroots issues in Linden, across the country, and partially globally, there seems to be the same. The ordinary man seems always to be very concerned, crying out about the unemployment, living conditions, the environment in which he lives, and how he's being treated at the whenever there are some sort of development. And I say this to say that a lot of the times the ordinary person in the streets, in the fields, whenever there are infrastructure development or any project in and around the community, that they seems to be the last person that are being consulted. I think most of the answers to some of the improvement lies with the ordinary person. And I think the administration should start taking a look and consulting people for them to get an input or to sit at the initial discussions when they're having so that their voices could be heard and they could guide the process of any improvement. All right. So the simple things, the grassroots issues, some of the most glaring ones, such as the environmental issues that we're having, littering, waste management, disposal. These are things that we're struggling with for years, ever since before I came into office or got involved in politics in 2016. These issues are always there. Why are they not improving? I think the administration should take a strong look at to see what are these what are the major concerns of the ordinary man, have conversation and consultation with him, let him feel included in the process of development. And I think we can see some changes in a positive direction, even if it's the reduction in the complaints towards those issues. But generally, I heard you said Dr. Ramayya, is it Ramayya?
Ramayya, yeah.
Yes, yeah. You spoke about the $4,000 initiative to kind of curb the unemployment. I think while these initiatives are very good, it has to be guided, because I can say specifically for some of the persons who came here at the Linden Mayor and Town Council, what the employees came, but is there any structure, anything in place to have them, operate in a structured manner? Because you're coming on a site to work. Was there any consultation with the management or the council to say, okay, we're going to integrate these people into your system? What is the effectiveness of their presence? And this is what I talk about consultations now. If you have the councillors and the administration involved in these discussions, then you decide the amount of people that you want and how they can effectively contribute to the system. So the monies that are being spent to pay these people, of course, it's some value for the labor. But when there's a program and the people are here and there is no proper structure in how you utilize the manpower, then it's just people on the site with nothing effective to do. And this is why you need good consultations with the ordinary man on the grassroots level or the local leadership. So I can relate to some of the issues that was outlined. I don't want to repeat those issues, but they are same and similar across the regions.
Thank you very much. That is very insightful. I'm very interested that you have two links, one in the community in general and another link with the bauxite industry. And we'll come back for you to tell us a bit about the bauxite industry, because in the 80s, I wrote a document on the nationalization of the bauxite industry and the problems we had during that period. And that I am a good friend of Lincoln Lewis, and I have followed and I had conversations with him from the labor perspective and the leaders before him in the bauxite industry. Bauxite has always been key to development, what we used to call Wismar Mackenzie, which today for years now has been called Linden. So we'll get back to it, but I agree with both of you. A person who does not have a job is a lost person on earth. What do you do when you wake up in the morning and you have nothing to do? You have no income and your parents does not have food, they themselves, and you're hustling during the day to put a meal together. I have seen this reality as I go to Guyana very regular and speak to young people. One of the reasons across the world we have a lot of instability is because the young people are not employed and they are not trained. Now, you raise a very important point, and both of you are virtually experts, not from the book, but in practice on local government, the NDCs. And there are several levels and tables of governance in Guyana. And the most local table of governance is the NDC. And then we have the table of governance of the regional. And then we go up further to the national and so forth. So there has to be a kind of revolution in terms of training and capacity and providing budget. So more and more there's a decentralization of security, people's protection of their lives, their properties, their family, of job creation, of drainage and irrigation. More and more this should be done. But what has happened over the years from the British to now is that we're having more and more centralization. And even though we have the regional system, it has become more a system that is ingrained with a lot of corruption and manipulation. And as you all are aware in Guyana, like all across the world, there's a lot of party politics, family politics, friends politics, and that kind of thing. So, Dr. Ramsamy, currently in your work that you are doing, I know you've raised the question of the temporary jobs that have been provided. Now, I'm aware in Trinidad that they give something called 10 days. So I used to be a trade consultant to open markets in Latin America for Point Lisa's industrial estate. So I got curious in Trinidad while I was there for a year. What is this 10 days? So I went down to Chaguanas and visited several families. And I asked them, tell me something. What do you do with the money with 10 days? And they said to me, Paul, you see that television? That's 10 days. You see that book bag my daughter have? That is 10 days. Okay. In India, they have 100 days. In Brazil and Mexico, particularly Brazil under Lula, they developed a lot of programs where you virtually give money to the family if they will ensure that the children go to school with clothes, with food, with books, and so forth. Now, these programs are very important and people are hungry. So there has to be an immediate and a short-term program. But in the end, we have to have what we call sustainable jobs. Sustainable jobs are jobs that last more than just 10 days or 100 days or 100 weeks. You know, we need sustainable jobs. And what I've not seen as yet in Guyana, I don't know if I'm missing out in my reading and my conversations, is a comprehensive development plan, as Brother Waynewright has said, that includes the grassroots at the table of governance to have a say, to have a say. Now, we have a great disadvantage in the political system whereas in the British time, we elected members of parliament from a community, from a constituency. And that member of parliament is responsible to that constituency. And in countries like Trinidad and Barbados, they have to have constituency offices. They have directors of constituency affairs. And people go to the office of these members of parliament, because if they go and the members of parliament is not talking to them, dealing with their problems, they don't vote for them the next election. And also that system allowed independent candidates. You might have somebody who is independent and doesn't want to belong to either of the two big parties, and they want to run as an independent just to deal with the issues of the community from which they are born, where they have kinship, friendships, and so forth. So I think in the absence of that, we need to pressure. And the problem we have with Guyana is that there was a fraudulent referendum in 1978 that produced a constitution that enthroned virtually a dictator in the country. But over the years, from 1992 to now, they are not changing it fundamentally. And only the politicians have the power to do some kind of reform with the Constitution. Until now, since 1992, we could blame the Burnham and the PNC that they created that Constitution. But what happened since 92? There has not been a referendum. All over the world, people are having referendums where the people have a say in how governance should be conducted. And when the people have to say, women want to have a say, poor people want to have a say, various minorities want to have a say, and so on and so forth. So that is the broad macro picture. But getting back to the nitty-gritty issues down in the grassroots, how are we doing with health? Dr. Ramayya, I know you are a health guy.
Paul, let me indulge myself a little with the things that you said.
Yeah, okay.
Once we have this two-party state, and look, over 75 years, the two-party, the PNC and the PVP, is governing Guyana, and this is based on race. And the whole idea with this ethnic problem and ethnic politics will not get us anywhere with all the riches, especially now that we have the oil in Guyana. And I was saying that, in the later 60s, how many Guyanese, intellectuals, average teachers, and students, they migrated, especially to the United States. Now you're talking about we need a referendum. I was telling Dr. Rose that what I have observed, and I want to commend our Deputy Mayor for saying some things that I visualize on the ground, that we should have the Constitution, Paul. And this is something maybe you can help from over there. That is dual citizenship, since Charanda's story with the no confidence motion is affecting the politics of this country, even for those people who wanted to come back and they can't make a contribution political wise because they will have to give up their citizenship in United States, England, or Canada. I want to know, apart from the presidency or the vice president, why people like yourself, people who are dear professors and work with big companies, cannot come back and be a part of the political system without giving up their citizenship overseas. That is something fundamental that should be addressed, because what I see, that will be a big challenge to both political parties. If people with the brain should come back, try to educate the people, we should not vote on race, we should vote on issues. And race is the politics of the power in this country. And when you can win, if the Indians and the blacks and the equilibrium is there now, then what we do, we have to buy votes. But coming back to the point that we need the poor people, as our mayor said, to be involved. The bill of quantity, right now they're doing a street in Wim. We don't know what is the bill of quantity. The people are not involved in building the street. We have all the community grounds in this country, in Berbice. It's all grass. We don't have nowhere for the children to go. What you find, gambling is become a paramount importance now, the super bet. Drinking, drugs. How do we curb the problems that we are facing? And my program, Paul, if the government or the regional people could relate back to the president or the vice president, look, Dr. Rama, identify the problems of Berbice and Region 5. Why don't we go and investigate if there is corruption? No, instead of investigating whether my story has any truth in it, I put on the gallows. I am condemned. That I should not, which means that I should support even the wrong things and give praises that good things are happening. I cannot, because the people, they're coming to me for answers. They're coming for me to solve the problems for them. Right now, Blackbush, the roads are so deplorable.
Tell us a bit about Blackbush, because you've been going to a lot of suicides. And when I visited Guyana on one weekend, there were about 2 or 3 suicides. And I've been told that in Blackbush, people don't come out even to the roadside because there's nothing to come out to. And the roads are so bad. The place is a big depression. And that was supposed to be a breadbasket for Guyana. It was supposed to be a breadbasket for God. So tell us a bit more details about Blackbush and how you think that the young people there could be helped. What has to be done?
We have to create jobs, Paul. But let me get to a vital aspect. The political affiliation has to change. That ideology has to change who we give concession to. Look, right now, as I'm talking to you, I have people with cows in the concrete savannas. The cows are still underwater. They're standing up on water, they have grass to graze. Uh, and blackbush trenches are dry. Now they're talking about bringing sheep and bringing pigs from other countries, that cattle as a whole, we're going to generate a new market. But what we have here, we are not making provision for our local farmers. And the water can be released from the concrete savanna into blackbush trench to the ocean. Why it is not being done? Because rice is cutting in blackbush. So you suffer one industry for the sake of the other. How are we going to develop a country?
Well,
When
that's
I
what I'm
talked
saying.
about,
We need a comprehensive development plan, not you do something here, you do something there, and you're working towards an election and so forth. You have to come up with a comprehensive plan that people could read and see what their role is. Let me ask the brother from Linden. The bauxite industry, Brother Waynewright, um, was central to Linden. Is it still central, or people are making a living independent of the bauxite industry and surviving? What is the reality?
So the bauxite industry, I would say, is still central to the township of Linden because of the number of employment, also its social responsibilities. So yes, it plays a pivotal part in Linden. While we would have seen the reduction in terms of the volume of export over the past decades, what has been maintained is still, effective and viable for the Linden community. I think one of the things that Linden was not quite prepared for is a scale down or a post-bauxite economy. Hence the reason you see the high unemployment in Linden. Most people will probably get into some sort of small business, and those small businesses, it's a number of them is a lot of people doing the same thing. It's either selling food. If I open a business today, if I open a car wash business today, and it seems to be something that is making some money, then I can guarantee you the next few months you see the similar businesses that are there. And in terms of just thinking, the bauxite industry back in the days when you were mining, most of those minings were done on surface. What happened? You have a lot of pockets of remnant deposits in Linden. And if we carefully look at those deposits, a lot of road construction is happening in Linden and around the country. That material, some of it is of a lateritic nature, laterite, some of it is bauxite capping. These material are ideal for doing the compact layer of any road construction, and they are there in large amounts. And I think if the personnel from GGMC, we sit with the Minister of Natural Resources and we put forward these things. All of these things could be employment. You have a lot of persons moving sand, loam, capping, but these things are not done in an organized manner. So if we're talking about creating proper and long-term employment, some of the resources are there. It just has to be done in a structured way. And this is what is lacking, I think, on a lot of levels in Linden and certain parts of the country, is that you have a lot of activities, but these activities can be seen as a hustle rather than structured employment or structured production. So the answer, yes, the bauxite industry is still playing a pivotal role, of course, with some people trying to do different things. But of course, there's still a large amount of unemployment. And what is needed is a comprehensive study where you can sit and have sustained employment, not short-term jobs. You need industry, you need investment. I'm fear off to say this. I was talking about consultations earlier. One of the things that is happening, and this is very dear to me because I am part of the bauxite industry, I see where it can grow and how it can help the Linden's economy and the country's economy, is that we have a lot of reserves that are untouched. And recently we learned that the government is doing a 1,000 house project, which I think for all those young professionals and young people or people who've been looking for house lots and to have ownership of their own property over the years, this initiative could be a very good solution. But based upon the initial, the proposed location and my knowledge of the deposits, this location or the proposed location seems to be bordering the deposit, which has, I think, 8 to 9 million tons of bauxite reserves. Now, what can potentially happen? We hear about the gas to shore project. We also hear about the Amelda Falls project, which can potentially reduce the cost for power. If that cost for power is reduced, then the resuscitation of the alumina plant becomes a viable economic solution for Linden and Guyana.
Of course.
And so when I spoke about consultations, now if you're going to propose a location to do 1,000 house projects, obviously persons who are involved in the bauxite industry, persons involved in NISIL, you have to consult with these people, because it's a reason why there was no economic development on these lands that are in close proximity of all active areas of Linden. So I think these are things that need to be reviewed. It can affect the future of the Linden Township, the Region 10, and by extension the country, because while we have a massive oil find, the other natural resources still need to be preserved and mined or operated in such a way where you have a multifaceted mineral resource throughout the country, where you have different sorts of employment. So we need to be cautious in the whole development. While you think about the housing and everything for social and economic development for individuals, that also has to take into consideration how does it affect future investment and the economics of the country. So that is a major concern in terms of when we're talking about, how do we solve employment? Now, take for instance, if next year or next 5 years, there's an investor that needs a significant amount of iron ore or refractory grade ore that is very present, that is proven at this location, and the housing project, let's say, is just adjacent to there. Now, if you know the bauxite area, the shape of a deposit is determined by the areas that are being drilled. So, but that is not the actual space that is needed. If you're going down 200 and 300 feet, you need spaces to dump, you need areas to develop your drainage system. So, these things need to be reviewed, they need more consultation. And as in terms of the politics of Guyana, I heard, I think as Dr. Ramayya mentioned, if you look at the political landscape in Guyana, it's virtually even. Because if you look at the distribution in parliament, it's either a 1 or 2 seat majority. Whichever party sits in power, at some point we have to be politically matured and of course, there have to be some issues that are bipartisan issues that we can work for development. And as the deputy mayor of Linden, and as a person who I think represent the people, I would have said it publicly. Some of it did not go down well with my colleagues, that once we work with development, if there's any idea or proposal for development, of course we can work with it. All right. So there needs to be a more open approach from the governmental level. I think most of the senior operatives in the government, the president, the vice president, need to be more actively, directly involved with people, not only people that are from the ruling party, but people who has opposing views, because some of those opposing views can be beneficial to the growth of the country. You don't look as if I differ from something, that difference means that I'm against you. I am different on the issue based upon the knowledge that I have on that issue. And until that point where we are politically mature to understand if something is being criticized or somebody has a different approach or opinion, and that is considered in a way that it's a positive input, I think we can move forward as a country.
7. All From One Supplier is pleased to announce its online shipping for West Indian and American groceries. Order online at allfromonesupplier.com and with free shipping and deliveries to any part of the United States. Save time and energy to shop for all of your West Indian groceries from the safety of your home or office. We carry West Indian products like curry powders, meats and fish, dashing bush, pepper sauce, sodas, and your favorite snacks. All From One Supplier has it all. All From One Supplier fulfills and ships your order directly to you. So visit All From One Supplier today to start shopping, or call All From One Supplier at 718-551-3292 to handle all of your West Indian grocery needs. That's All From One Supplier, 718-551-3292. Free shipping, free deliveries, or curbside pickup from allfromonesupplier.com. Take a trip this year to tour the beautiful Dubai and Abu Dhabi with Travelspan. This package includes a round trip with sights that are a beauty to behold. Visit the Dubai Golden City from views at the top of the Burj Khalifa, or tour Abu Dhabi and visit the Ferrari World theme park. Experience the desert safari with a barbecue dinner and belly dancing. And also have a Dow cruise dinner. Call in Guyana 227-1701, that's 227-1701, or in the United States 212-243-0865, that's 212-243-0865. And in Trinidad, call 645-1604.
You've articulated one second, Ramayya. You've articulated very clearly a number of points. Number one is there is historically by rulers that they don't consult the people in the community. Now, what they are not aware of is that people in the community have knowledge that they do not have. And you have made the very important point. Building houses on top of mineral deposits and so forth that could be useful and developed to bring bigger development in the area is a short-term idea that doesn't make sense. And the reason for this, I go back to it and you mentioned it, we need a comprehensive development plan. But in the process of building that development plan, you have to go to the communities and consult and acquire that knowledge that the people have, That's a very important point. And the other point you made, which you've said it better than I could say. What you are asking for is a new political culture, a new social culture in Guyana, where not because somebody is not in your political party that they cannot speak on an issue. And they don't have to agree with you. In a liberal democracy, people are allowed to have different views. I teach students all the time. I develop a methodology there for them to write a paper. They look at the issue, they do a history on the issue, and then they develop arguments for and arguments against. And then they try to look at the contradictions, and then they make a policy recommendation. So it is very poor leadership, extremely poor leadership, if a leadership does not have the self-confidence and the capacity to listen to all points of view and then come to some kind of intelligently well-informed decision on what should be done. Another point you've raised that is very important is the concept of a post-bauxite development. I have not read anything about that. How beyond bauxite, the area of Linden and that region can and will be developed. In what areas? Where would be the emphasis? How would you do it? What are the needs there? You know, years ago, the Ministry of Labor used to have labor offices all over the country to find out who is unemployed, register them, find out what skills they have, and so on and so forth. So it's remarkable that you are the deputy mayor, you're sitting at one of the tables of governance, and you are saying you all have now been consulted, and you all are now having an opportunity to make an input and to have an independent view about how Linden should be developed. I think it's very short-sighted by any leadership, but this thing has been happening all the time. Ramayya, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Paul, I want to contribute something to what Wayne has said. One of the problems that I witness here, that small businesses to expand is difficult. Today, we have an inflow of Chinese businesses in hardware, goods, clothing, and all the corner store, Paul. You know, when we were little boys, we had corner store all over the place. And people could have, you know, do their own business and survive. Today, what is happening here? The type of grocery that is coming in and the type of expansion and the money that these people have, they actually closed down all the small businesses in Burmese. All corner, you got big Chinese store. I don't have a problem with that. But what happened is, because the people are not geared in the communities, business-wise, how to come together, how to expand the business, how to buy in large quantity and be distributed. They don't have that kind of basic business knowledge. So when these Chinese business, they come into in Georgetown, people are crying out all over in the country right now. And they have big investment, Paul. They can buy a large quantity and they can sell very cheap. And you know what is happening here? We have created now another flow of unemployment person in the communities, where the mother and the father and maybe the kids used to be involved. They have to go and look for a job. Where is the job?
Well, you're making a very important point, and there are a number of reflections I want to give on this, particularly regarding Chinese. First of all, they have access to capital. China has a lot of money, and China and Chinese agencies are providing these people with capital. There's one. But I have studied the role of Chinese in what you call the Chinese diaspora. In every part of the Western world, you have Chinatowns. Chinese in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, India, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and so forth, and now in mainland China. These folks are connected with their families and their relatives and so forth. And the way we do business, going through a bureaucracy to do business, they don't do it like that. They don't have to have pay up the bill 3 months in advance and all that. They do business among their family, and they could send a lot of cheap goods to Guyana and different parts of the world. So I have read extensive studies about how there is almost another economy, a very dynamic one, outside of mainland China, where Chinese in various parts of the world are prospering because they help each other in a big way. So the competition with poor people down in the quarantine or in Linden and so is very, very difficult because there's no competition with Chinese capital. And the government should be aware of this. I have seen it in Linden. I go, the most important store in Linden is the big Chinese shop. And I've been in there and bought stuff. I saw the other day in Letem or somewhere down there in a region, Chinese store got burned down. I don't know if it was an electrical problem or what it was, but that is the situation. And here we are coming. How do our government, whichever government is in power, how do they situate themselves with the resources that we have to help the Guyanese down below? Because if you are in a capitalist system, and you all know capitalism is survival for the fittest, capitalism is a jungle, and you can't survive if you don't get support from your team. The Chinese are supporting their people all over the world. So that's a very important point you raised. Now, I want to get back to one of the points that Wayne raised. Wayne, but before you go, I want to tell you something that I discovered about Wismar. The name Wismar came from Germany. There were German indentured laborers that were brought to Wismar. And there's a beautiful city in Wismar, and in Germany called Wismar. I have a friend who rode with motorcycle all the way from Belgium to that city. He told me it's beautiful. But now that you are deputy mayor, I want to talk to you when I come to Guyana to see how you could do an exchange between the mayor of Wismar in Germany with the mayor of Linden, because it's very interesting. You know what I mean? Very interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much. That would be very interesting.
Yeah, we have to work on it. Ramayya, remind me, we work on it with the brother. We got to get these guys come down there and invest. But before you guys, we go further, I want to bring to your notice something and read something to you all that is amazing. About sometime last week, a Guyanese historian in London, he was a professor at London University. He writes about cricket. He wrote about 3 volumes on the history of cricket. He's doing a 4th volume. And he was in the library in London and he found a letter that my grandfather wrote. My grandfather is from the quarantine and he used to run a bank in Wim. And then the bank moved to Rose Hall and they call it Royal Bank of Rose Hall. So, Devin, are you there? Can you put the letter up? Oh, he's going to put it up. Okay, that's in Wim Coca. That's how the Alness Coca. Alness, I was born in Wim, but I grew up part of my life in Alness. Now I'm going to read this letter to you all. W.V. Tennassee, the 3rd of May, 1928. And this is the headline of the newspaper. Government's drainage arrangement for more starvation in Manchester and Ulverston. And he wrote the letter to the New Daily Chronicle. Sir, some time ago, you published a letter from me, the personnel of the Irrigation and Drainage Department. Let me just get this from my, Some time ago, you published a letter from me, read the personnel of the Irrigation and Drainage Scheme Committee. When I suggested that 1 or 2 proprietors should be appointed to the committee, whenever and wherever a block of villages is declared a drainage area under the Drainage Scheme Ordinance, this, of course, fell on deaf ears. Now that the end of Lancaster, Manchester, and Ulverston Salton Drainage Scheme, after a period of 2 years, is beginning to see the light of day, one begins to picture the results, good or bad, and to agree or disagree, as the case may be, with the details of the schemes. Any objection for or against the schemes now could have been avoided, and time and money saved, and the government in the first instance taking the proprietors into confidence insofar as the details of the schemes were concerned. At present, there is one important objection which is causing the proprietors some anxiety, and that is the proposed plan to relieve the water from the savannah by the ketting between Manchester, Ulverston, through Liverpool and Alness Sea Cocos. Look at the plan from a layman's point of view. One sees that it is unworkable for more reasons than one. The first and foremost is that every drop of water in the savannah is required in time of drought for irrigation purposes. So talk of using the savannah water for souring up the channels, which is the primary reason for the erection of the 7 check sluices on the north of the public road, is a big joke. One agrees that whenever the water in the savannah is very high and the Krung dams are threatened, that they be relieved by reducing the water to a safe level, but surely not through the existing outlets or channels, unless it is the intention of our so-called parental government to increase instead of decreasing the inmates of the almshouse. Instead, unless it is the intention of our so-called parental government to increase instead or decrease the inmates at the almshouse. Personally, no one knows better than our able director of public works that the primary object of knitting is to relieve the savannah water in time of floods as to protect and save the Krung dams of the villages and also the public road. Not to speak of drainage to crop and to livestock. But the talk of relieving the water from the savannah through the sea cocos is madness and childish, for the simple reason that the savannah water is always higher than the village water, and that it is the same and very time when the villages require drainage that the water in the savannah will have to be relieved. Consequently, the drainage of the villages is naturally bound to be hampered and retarded to the detriment of the proprietors, and the results will be no crop, no livestock, and more starvation in the district. Can anyone who has the interests of the farmers at heart deny this? It is also the opinions of those who are most competent to speak that should the proposed plan to be carried out, it would not be in the interest of the proprietors, as the efficiency of the schemes will be impaired. Then again, thousands of dollars could and would have been saved through the non-erection of the check sluices, as I said before, had the government taken the proprietors into confidence. They would have objected from the beginning of the works, as they are objecting today, to the savannah water passing through the sea cocos, and the director of public works would have been told that there is no necessity for check sluices, 6 or 7 in all, a willful and reckless waste of the proprietors and taxpayers' money, and they are sure to remain white elephants or landmarks, especially the concrete ones at the public road, unless they are removed. The amount expended on these sluices could have been saved and used to better the advantage by opening the Manchester Ulverston kitting direct into the sea with a coker in line with the other sea cokers, instead of connecting the kitting with the village drainage. In my humble opinion, the check sluices should have been erected at the extreme end of the township of the villages, so as to be able to control the drainage and provision and house lots, if the latter are to be made habitable and kept under sanitary condition. Thank you very much. I am W.V. Tennassee, the 3rd of May, 1928. My brothers, 1928. He's saying exactly what Waynewright is saying about consultancy and the knowledge of the people in the community. He became later the guy who set up the village office in Alness. He became the overseer, and so my father was also overseer in Ulverston, also Salton area. But the point I want to make, and I asked the young man who put up the coca in Alness today, can you put it up back for the viewers to see that the coca is all broken up? Look, it's there. When I was growing up in the 60s at high school, my grandfather was chairman. My father was the village, in charge of the village there, and they had a drag line will come and dig out the trench there. He was the overseer. They will dig it out, and we had a person, a ranger, we call him. The whole system there had a system. They would raise up and close it up at the right time so water could flow. In that very trench, people used to just go there and catch mullet and all kind of fish. So I'm asking the question, okay, the British were bad at not consulting people because they belonged to an empire, but it's 56 years we have been politically independent. You mean from my grandfather wrote this letter on May 3rd, 1928. Look at the coca in 2022. What do you all think about that? Ramayya and Mr. Wayne Bethune, what do you all think about that? What has happened to Guyana? Or what is happening?
There's, Paul, we need a lot more consultation, more people to get involved. But as I said, the political system that we have, it is not, the machinery is not working. We have to get away from this type of dictatorship and the type of manipulation that we have. You can imagine since 1928, and that was the condition. But that condition that I saw there, Paul, is far better off than the condition today. All the outfalls is clogged with sling mud. Drainage is every time you have a heavy rain, they have to carry a high mark to go and dig it. For what reason? The problem is at this stage, as you said, the structure of the political framework is not working because a lot of money, and I will tell you one thing, I don't care who when we have a flood, and maybe Wayne can tell you, I don't know if there are floods in they call people to go and do the job. We don't know how much the job costs to get it done. There is so much of skullduggery within the system. Unless those things are rectified and transparency is there, we will continue. I don't know how long I have on this earth left, but it will continue to be an adverse effect. And who are the people? The poor people suffer more. They don't have pumps to pump the water out from their land. The kitchen garden is damaged. You name it. A host of things. And to start back all anew again, it is a problem for them. They don't have the finances.
And
so
sanitation
what you
is fundamental to good health. Sanitation is fundamental to good health.
Exactly. But we not, if our garbage, now the garbage.
Let me ask Brother Waynewright there. Brother Waynewright, you heard Ramayya speak of drainage and irrigation in his regions. What is the situation with drainage and irrigation in Linden? Do you all have a lot of flooding and so?
Of course, we do have a lot of flooding when during the inclement weather, or if there's a heavy sustained downpour. One of the things is that most of the drainage network in Linden, especially in the Mackenzie area, those drainage are clogged. They are not being serviced, in my estimation, for more than 20 years, some of those drains. The drains that are being constructed is, I don't think, you don't see any drains being constructed with a surveying instrument taking the direction of flow into consideration. So the drain is just flat. So there is no, no point of runoff. So we do experience flooding. It was very bad, I think, in 2020 and 2021 during the inclement weather. And what we see also happen is some of even the higher areas, Amelia's Ward and the Blue Burial Block 22 area, these areas are relatively high. But what happened based upon how the roads were constructed without drains, and the topography of the land is undulating. So on the lower side, we're at the bottom of two slopes, the waters are accumulated there. Some of them are at people's yards, and those portions are flooded regularly because there is no solution. The solutions, in my estimation, is beyond the capacity of the MNTC and also the RDC. So what is needed is a comprehensive engineering study of these areas that are already allotted as house lots to alleviate this flooding. It's massive works, but it takes more than what the RDC and the MNTC has to bring some form of relief.
So who is really responsible? To both you and Dr. Ramayya, I ask this question. Who's responsible for drainage and irrigation? Tell me about the tables of governance for drainage and irrigation in the country up to the minister responsible. Let's start from below. Who's responsible for drainage and irrigation?
Well, there's some drainage networks that the MNTC is responsible for.
Spell it out. What do you mean by what did you say?
Mayor and Town Council, the municipality.
Mayor and Town Council is responsible.
Yeah, and there are other that the regional, this is the Regional Democratic Council they're responsible for. I think the more
and then above that, who do we have above regional?
The NDIA, which falls under
no,
I think
say what NDIA is for the listeners.
National Drainage and Irrigations Authority or Association.
And they have a director for that.
And yes, and that is controlled
by. And above him now, who do you have?
That is the NDIA is controlled by the central government.
And but which minister?
That comes under the Ministry of Agriculture.
Under the Minister of Agriculture, even though it's Linden.
Yes.
Even though it's Linden, he deals with drainage and irrigation.
Yes.
Okay, good. So how you as a deputy mayor, how do you go up these tables of governance to explain to them what should be done? You have said we have to have a comprehensive engineering study in order to deal with it. Have you all worked on this with the regional council, the director, with the minister?
Well, there is some collaboration with the RDC, the Regional Democratic Council, and together we may write the minister, or sometimes the mayor would write the subject minister for whatever issue we're being faced with, and the actions are taken from them. Some of them are responded to, but not all of them they're responded to. And I'm I get involved. I'm involved in this process since 2016. I was a councillor 2016, 2017, then deputy mayor from 2017 to date. So some of these issues are responded to based upon the resources of what the government can give you, and some are not responded to. And you and I would know that the municipalities across this country, the resources are very, very limited, especially to respond to the needs of people, given the revenue collection do we collect from residents and vendors across the township cannot suffice to serve even the most basic municipal requirements of the residents. So a lot of governmental intervention is needed at the municipal level, but a lot of times it's not forthcoming.
Wow. So what you are saying there is a very dim picture, because you need resources. And what does the government do with the money that they have? Don't they see that's a priority for drainage and irrigation in the 1,000 square miles we live on? That is virtually below sea level. The Dutch built that system for us. We are not living on islands. We are living on the coast. One little tsunami will wipe out the whole of Guyana's population on the coast. So don't they see what is wrong with those who govern?
Well, I think I can't speak much for the coastlands to see the effectiveness of what's happening there. But as for Linden specifically, where I am responsible for, like I explained to you, the drainage network, especially in places like Central Mackenzie and other low-lying areas along the Demerara River. If those drainages, that drainage network, it's serviced properly, the drainages are there, they worked in the past, the thing, they're not effective because they're not being serviced. And you just need, again, to sit with the local leaders, we come up with a plan, and we do it step by step to get some sense of effectiveness. And I think once that is done, a lot of the flooding that we experienced during the heavy downpours, that can be fixed. There are also some other major issues where some of the creeks that are coming and deposit into the Demerara River, those creeks either start or pass through some bauxite deposits. So there are sediments coming along with the runoff. That needs a more large scale study and fixing that, where some of them you have to have a comprehensive study of how you're going to curb this. And the other areas where there are housing development, Amelia's Ward, Block 22, some parts of Wizrock, these are areas that are now open. But for some of those areas, the grounds are undulating. Sometimes the bottom of slopes and the bill roads, but there are no drainage. So the waters, or sometimes they just put what we call some soakaway. The soakaway does not have the capacity to handle the volume of water that is being generated during the rainfall. So look, all I'm saying in a nutshell, look, if you, at all level of governance, where you have representative of the people from a local level, a regional level, and a central level, if we sit respectfully and have these conversations, then these things can be fixed. In the absence of that, we'll be spending a lot of money. There will be activity, but not much development or progress in my estimation. So the conversation got to come from a place of respect, inclusion, for us to get some serious progress.
That's so well said. Excellent, excellent. Brother Ramayya, how do you recommend to deal with your problems in your regions? Let me just ask Wayne, Deputy Mayor, a question. Would you say Linden is much higher than the coast usually? Is it?
Yes, it's higher. It's much higher.
Yeah. Okay. So, Dr. Ramayya, how? Deputy Mayor, you got to write a letter like my grandfather. We need a letter in the newspaper, what you just told us. My grandfather wrote that in 1928. You need to do a 2022 letter so that generations should come will see that Waynewright Bethune, your grandson, will say, my grandfather wrote this letter. Yes, Dr. Veerasammy.
Yeah, Paul, what Wayne said there is a mouthful. We have a more serious problem in the coastal area here. You mentioned about tsunamis. The NDIA is not a functional body, in my opinion. You can call them and you can complain. The whole sea defense, we are below sea level, and the sea defense, all the quarter woods that they have there is gone. The fish pond took over the whole of the northern side of the Wim Public Road and all the roads on the northern side. The fish pond is creating a bigger problem, and I talked about it. And now they're selling out dirt coming from the sea defense. And when you talk about these things, you become, because if you have people, Paul, friends at high places, you can do what you want to do. This is a problem that we have.
But it seems to me, Dr. Ramayya, what they're doing and what Deputy Mayor is saying, they're doing nothing.
Well,
what they want to do, they're doing nothing.
They are not proactive. If you want to put it this way, they are not
that word, proactive.
So what happened is now, unless we step up and we put things in place, we will continue to break down the system. People get in a fish pond and make their own channels. So the main channels now is limited to carry water out in the sea. And this increased the flooding. And what Wayne is saying is absolutely correct. And this is a problem for our whole of Guyana. We have not to look at political favorites. We cannot look at that anymore. We are looking at the poor people. We are looking at the people who just doing some cash crop, mining some ducks and some fowls. Those are the people. Those are what they're depending on the kitchen garden for a living. And as soon as you get that 2 days rainfall, everything is underwater. Why? Because the drainage is not working. The sea defense is in a complete chaos. And we have to now.
My grandfather's letter said that in 1928, the policy that was being pursued in Ulverston, Manchester, Alness, and Salton was going to send people to the almshouse. That means they're so impoverished, they can't take care of themselves. They got to go and get alms, you know? People, they got to beg.
I don't know if the resources that we have will take us out from the poverty that we are living. You know, this is the problem. We thought when you discover oil and you get oil to the gas to the shore, Brother Wayne is saying we're supposed to be a rich country in our life. We're not supposed to get people begging in the streets. We have a lot of beggars on the streets today. Why? What we can ask a lot of questions, but who is going to address when we don't have community-minded people who can give suggestions and where those suggestions can be receptive to the ears of those who govern and act upon it and see how we can find a remedy. We want remedy for our problems, Paul. And once the corruption is allowed, you will not get remedies for the problems that we are facing. And I know there's a lot of corruption is going on now, right now. And I expose them. And if I can expose them, it is for the government of the day to say, why Ramayya is talking about this thing. Let me talk to this man. Let me see where this man is. I asked to bring all the contracts openly, and I will show you how one person got 7 contracts, never went to GRA, never filed income tax, but they used various names. People got flood relief money, Paul. They are workers that don't have owner for right. Bring the, if you want transparency, bring the people names and what they own and what they lost. And the rice millers can tell you. So what I am saying in general before you close, we
have about 15 minutes. Keep going.
We need people, we need the government officials who got the power to come sit with the, you know what is happening, and I mentioned this openly, Paul, and I'm going to say it here again. When the vice president comes to Berbice or the president, they organize their own people to be in front. And the people who have questions, they sit at the back. So they can't ask no question. So everything is copacetic. Everything is fine. Everything is okay. And recently I was told by a professional man that the Tennassee Region 6 has no problem, that the only problem in Region 6 is Ramayya. Ramayya is the problem in Region 6. So you can imagine, all the drainage is inside of me. So I am the problem.
I just read in the newspapers that there is an increase, a significant increase of people seeking passports. That is an indicator that people want to leave the country.
Yes,
and, today in the world, we have a big problem with refugees because a lot of countries have collapsed across the world. And people are, you know, like right here in America, we have a serious problem on the southern border. And quite recently, it's become a political football. People arrive in Texas and they ship the people to go to in front of the house of the vice president. Then they ship them to another area in Boston. They're treating these migrants just like the human traffickers do when they bring them across. But the point I want to make is that in Europe, in all across the world, in various countries, you know, like there's a lot of people have written in the newspapers that they want a model like Dubai in Guyana. Brother, I have been to Dubai. In Dubai, the people who are not Dubai, the people who are Dubai, they get mansions, they get privileges, they get opportunities. It's their country, right? But the people who come there, they don't get no visas to become resident. They can't reunite with their family. They get dog wages. They don't have no labor laws controlling it. And they get fired. They get abused in those countries. I have been there. I've witnessed it. That's not the kind of country Guyana we want in Guyana. Dubai is not a model for us in Guyana. Guyana, we have had a history of labor and labor laws and labor unions and respect for people's rights since the time of Critchlow. So what is happening with our country is that there is a state of confusion going on. People are looking all over the place for remedies to the problems of Guyana, and they are not doing proper analysis like the deputy mayor said. You have a problem with drainage, whether it's Bobis, whether it's Linden, you have to do a proper study on what the problem is and consult the people in the area and so forth. But, this is the reality that we face, and it's not easy. So, gentlemen, we have a few minutes more, and I'll ask each one of you, if you could reflect a bit, give us a little advice on one single step that can be made to address the problems of jobs in the area that you're from and the issue of drainage and irrigation. Let's just deal with two, jobs and drainage and irrigation. Is there any concrete suggestion you all have on what can be done?
Yeah, Paul, let me start before Dwayne. One of the things that we need citizens outside of the political arena to be involved in that type of committee that you want to form. That they must not be politically inclined to be a favorite, because all the political appointees and the people coming from party people, party loyalties. And once we have that, Paul, we will not have the kind of transparency that we wanted. You have to get people to be involved, different organizations to be involved. How can we, if we have this, the president or the vice president bring out the $40,000 per month for 10 days a month, you cannot get the regional people to administer that money. They don't have 4,000 people that they claim that they have. I will tell you this. Now let the president or the vice president prove me wrong. All that I need to see is the list. And I will show the president or the vice president that, look, there are 3 people from one home when it's supposed to be one person. The other question is, if your husband is a contractor, whatever it may be, nobody is supposed to get a job because they have a breadwinner in you. So what happened? This type of transparency we don't see. So we need different stakeholders when this money is coming out. Like the people who cutting fish, what the vice president chair of the checks. There are people who get the money, who not deserve the money. Like the fertilizers, for example. These things you need private people for. And once private-minded people who are not biased, who are not politically inclined, you will have a better rationality with transparency, and you will find that the development of Region 5, Region 6, and all the regions. But once you have party people to do the work for you, it could be a party thing. It's not going to be a people's thing.
Wayne, what is your take on a suggestion, a recommendation on the issue of jobs and the issue of drainage and irrigation? You're back. Yeah, Wayne. We're hearing you now.
We can hear you, Wayne.
But we are hearing you.
We can hear you. Go ahead, speak.
Go ahead, speak.
You can hear us.
I don't know where we are. I just came back.
Yeah, where we are at is that as the program is closing, I asked Ramayya and yourself to make one recommendation about how we could create jobs and how we could deal with the drainage and irrigation. Those two two things?
Okay, I would say in terms of the job creation, we have to look at our geographic locations for Linden. I think Linden, the fact that it has a lot of natural resources, a lot of construction material in terms of, as we mentioned earlier, capping, laterite, loam. We have to see how we can honor these resources in commercial quantities and have people be employed, not just on a short-term basis, but long-term. I know the Regional Democratic Council, they have rigorous economic agriculture program, that they're looking at. So there is some hope in terms of agriculture, looking at some non-traditional products and agriculture products to see how they can have more of a smaller, medium scale operation. But generally, there's one thing I would keep saying in these discussions. In terms of long-term and sustained employment, there has to be an interagency collaboration, both on a governmental level and the agency that work with these governments. So you can look at your resources, look at your land space, and you come up with a plan. If there is investment that needs land, if there's investment for resources, to kind of look at it and prioritize which is better for the country. And so you need subject ministers, ministries, and the level of governance to be involved in this discussion. So when a decision is being made, it's ventilated at all levels. So when it's being implemented is from a broad spectrum of involvement, and the area for errors are minimal. All right, so I think once we do that both for jobs and drainage and irrigation, or any other thing that we have to do in terms of development or improvement of this country, I think we are in a better place. And also taking the politics into consideration. Let's not look as a difference in opinion or some criticism as being a negative impact towards the party or the government, because I can criticize something and it'd be more beneficial to the administration rather than somebody agreeing with it, and it could be very detrimental to the program or project or whatever is going on.
Point taken. Gentlemen, thanks a million for your contribution tonight on the grassroots issues in Guyana. On behalf of Globespan, I would like to thank our listeners and our two panelists who have dealt with the subject of grassroots issues. Until next time, I'm Paul, Nehru, Tennassee for Globespan.